creatures of our God and King, and every mountain, every valley, everything. Oh, and every good word, every song we could sing. You make everything. You make everything beautiful.
Well, good morning, NorthPoint. Always good to see you. And I got to tell you, I'm so excited about this series that we're going to be doing. It's a little different than anything that we have ever done before. And if you got here in time to kind of look through the foyer, you saw we've tried to make it look like an art gallery. What's to me most exciting about this is that most of those pieces are from you. They're from NorthPoint artists that have drawn, painted those things. We do have some classic works of art as well, not originals, but replicas of those classic works that are up around as well. But most of these came from artists here at NorthPoint. And I don't know if you've made your way through there yet or not to look, but you got to look at all of these, but you got to find duct tape. So, and if you haven't seen it yet, you got to look. Don't touch. You're going to want to touch it. Don't touch it. Please don't touch it, but you're going to want to touch it. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go out in the foyer and you find it, and you'll know what I mean once you see this. See, this is a series that we want to experience. And so we're going to learn things, we're going to talk about things, we're going to engage our minds, but I'm especially hopeful that this will engage through our minds, that it'll engage our hearts. Through experience, through hearing stories, through various forms of art, through our artists bringing their stories to play, and just having sensory experiences in this series as well. Now, for some of you, I know that you're probably pumped about this. You're like, oh, this is great. Give the artists their due. It's about time. You're speaking my language, and I hope we do speak your language, and I hope you learn a lot. I hope you're affirmed, encouraged, and you grow and you love this. Others of you, though, probably right now are thinking about taking a break from NorthPoint for a little while, you know? You're like, I don't know about this. It's like, I didn't read many classic works of literature. I'm not really into poetry and music. I don't go to art galleries. Maybe some of you, you're a pragmatic person. You're like, what is pragmatic? What is efficient? What is very practical in life? I mean, do we really need to take time to talk about this? And we're going to do this for 2 months. Maybe you didn't know that, but you're like, for that long, we're going to do this series? Are you serious? Aren't there more important things in life, and certainly more important things in our faith for us to talk about? And here's what I want you to see. I love you, but I'm going to show you that you're dead wrong. You are dead wrong. I don't know a more beautiful way to say that than that. And you're a pragmatic person, so you probably like it straight. So there you go. I want to show you that you're dead wrong. I want to start with my story and see if you can relate to it. As a boy, growing up, I didn't think much about art and beauty. I was like a true boy and into the things a lot of boys are into. I just did boy stuff. And so I like to ride my Huffy BMX bike around. It looked like this one. I found this. This was not my bike, but it was very much like this. And I would ride that around the neighborhood, you know, and then I would come careening into our driveway, and I would whip the handlebars up and jump off the back of it and whip the bike around and slide through the gravel and make gravel marks, you know, in the driveway. And so that I like that. I like to watch sports growing up. I like to play sports. I like to watch cartoons. Animaniacs was my favorite cartoon that I would watch. Any Animaniac fans out there, if you know this? It's kind of like an adult/kid cartoon for the humor that's in it. I like to play my Nintendo and my Sega Genesis. Lots of Mario Brothers happened in my household. This was before PlayStation and Xbox were around, so those are the things that we played. I like to be smart. So I like to be smart, and if I couldn't be smart, being a smart aleck would suffice for me. So it was either one or the others. I had a great family growing up as well. I had parents and 4 siblings, and this picture was probably taken at a Sears or a JCPenney. You could kind of see the gray background a little bit there. My mom's head is cut off, unfortunately, on the side of that, but it doesn't quite qualify for awkward family photos, but it's pretty close to one of those. And maybe you look back at your family photos, you got family photos that look like this. But I love my family. I enjoyed a lot of time at a school and the youth group I was a part of, had lots of friends and enjoyed social things with people as well. As far as church went, and this is a picture of the church that I actually grew up in, Lake Hills Baptist Church. As far as my church upbringing, it was very clear to me that God created us, that we needed a relationship with him, and that relationship comes through believing that Jesus died and resurrected for you. And then within that faith, things were very simple. They were very straightforward. God said it in the Bible, obey it. It's very easy to understand what God said. Just obey it, follow the rules, do what God said. And if you follow what God said, your life should turn out pretty good because you're obeying him and following him and walking with him. So my faith upbringing was very concrete. It was very clear. And I would say it was definitely on the pragmatic side. There wasn't a lot of mystery to it. You didn't ask a lot of questions about things. You didn't wonder too much about things. You just did the right things that you were supposed to do. And so in some sense, my world was fairly narrow, especially as a kid growing up. It was focused on me, my family, my personal relationship with Jesus, my church, do the right thing, and all will be well. So it was pretty safe. It was simple. It was good. One other part of my upbringing is that maybe things like history and other cultures and space, they weren't really things that we were wondering about. It was kind of like, did those things even exist? Those aren't really a part of your daily life, and so do those things even exist? Art, for instance, was as much to be nervous about as it was to be explored. You know, there are naked people in some of those pictures, right? And so you should probably just stay away from those things. Classic literature was probably not worth the time unless it was a spiritual classic literature like Pilgrim's Progress. You could read that, but the other ones, I don't know if you should give much attention to. And classical music, at least to me, was boring, right? I didn't want anything to do with that. So overall, it was like there's just more important things in life, more spiritual things to give your attention to. But then I began to have some experiences. I got to travel to Peru for a missions trip, of course. But in Peru, I was able to see the Andes Mountains, and I was able to see animals that I had never seen before, animals like llamas and alpacas. I was able to experience a culture and a people that I kind of stood back from as like, this is amazing. This is really incredible. Over time, I'd have the opportunity to travel to India and Hungary and Mexico and other places in the world and often stand in awe of the people and the landscape and the food and the architecture of those places. In college, I had to take a music appreciation class. I wasn't very excited about taking this class, but I had a really good teacher, and over the course of that class, we had to listen to things like Mozart and Beethoven. And as I listened to Beethoven, you know what? I still didn't like it very much, but I did learn to appreciate it. Come to find out that Beethoven goes deaf later on in his life, and he's still composing symphonies when he can't even hear anymore. That's incredible. My mom is a wonderful, and always been a wonderful cook. And this picture looks like a meal that we would have in my family on any given Tuesday night, right? Which is just like 3 or 4 course meal. Like you'd have a meat, you'd have multiple sides, you'd have mashed potatoes, you'd have bread, we'd put some jelly or apple butter. Has anybody ever had apple butter before? My grandmother from West Virginia made apple butter, and we put that on there, and that was the kind of meal we had. And over time, I found myself like really interested in food, like culinary experiences, like learning how to make good food, learning to appreciate food, and not just creating it, but plating it in the right way, presenting it in the right way. Which sometimes is a little bit of a conflict in our household now because my wife's a really good cook and she cooks most of the time, but sometimes I just get the hankering and it's like, I want to do something. I've been sitting at a desk all day, and I just want to cook. And so I'll cook and then I'm like not quite ready, and she's like, could we please get the food on the table? And I'm like, no, it's got to look right. It's got to look right. She's like, there are 7 people here we got to feed. Let's just get it done with, right? And it can be very pragmatic, but I like it, cooking, learning about that. And then an art form that I had always despised and often made fun of provided an experience that changed me. Now, see, I married this young woman who really liked music, and she liked Broadway, and she liked shows. And so I decided that I would sacrifice for her. I think it was on our 3rd wedding anniversary, and to me, this really was a sacrifice. I will take you to Chicago to see Phantom of the Opera, okay? We're going to do this, and I will endure through this 2-hour or whatever long Broadway show that I'm really not looking forward to, but I love you, so we'll go and do it. And you know what? After we had that experience and got done with that, I stood back from that and I was amazed. I'm not sure I understood anything that they were singing or saying. I'm not totally sure what the thing was about. I'm still not totally sure what it was about. But when we got done with it, I was like, that was unbelievable. The majesty, the beauty, the ability, with no amplification in this theater, just architectural panels, and they're just projecting their voices and being able to sing in amazing ways. I was impressed. It was moving. And that young lady has been my wife for over 21 years now, so that worked out pretty good on that end. As I've reflected and looked back on this a little bit more, moving from kind of a very black and white, simplistic, keep it pragmatic, little room for art and beauty, to an appreciation of art and beauty a little bit more, I came to realize that art and beauty has actually always been with me. I just didn't realize it. And I think it's probably always been with you as well, whether you realize it or not. See, when I look back on my upbringing, I see things like, I did act in a couple of plays in high school, and I always enjoyed drama, so that was there. I always had this fascination for animals. I've always liked animals, especially eagles and lions. I mean, who doesn't want a big cat as a pet, right? Don't you want that? When you see these big cats, don't you just want to, play with them? Don't you? Maybe a little risky, but you kind of want to. I've always thought in heaven someday, God, could I have a lion? Would that be cool? We could be buddies and do that. So I always had that going on. And then when I think about church music, growing up, church music for us was mostly piano and organ. And those hymns that we would sing often had really poetic, well-versed songs put to Beethoven's music. It was Beethoven's tunes that we were singing. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee. If you've sung that before, that's from Beethoven, man. And then this line, which I think is the greatest verse from any hymn that's ever been written. Could we with ink the ocean fill, and were the sky of parchment made, were every stalk on earth a quill, and every man a scribe by trade, to write the love of God above would drain the ocean dry, nor could the scroll contain the whole, though stretched from sky to sky. That's pretty good. That's pretty poetic. And then at times, I would also be struck by the beauty of a girl. And this has happened to you before too. You've seen somebody before, and they just catch your eye. You're like, wow, that person is beautiful. Especially this young freshman setter that I met up in Ankeny 24 years ago, and have spent my life with her. See, I think whoever you are, and wherever you're at, there is within you both a longing for beauty and an ability to create it. First of all, there is within every person that has been created on this earth, every person that is a human, a longing for beauty, a desire for beauty, and the ability to appreciate beauty. And then along with that longing for beauty, you have within you the ability to create beauty. It's in you. Now again, some of you, I don't have to convince you about that. You're like, yes, I love nature, I love drawing, I love reading poetry, I love music, I love appreciating it, I do long for it, and I like to create it. I think about some of you that maybe are here and you like to take message notes. And so for most of you, the way that you take notes on the message is you wait for a point on the screen or you listen to what is being taught, and then you write that down with words. But there's others of you that you're like, I want to do this, but I'm a visual person, so I've got to draw those things out. I've got to create a picture of what's being done. In fact, we had a lady that was a part of our church a number of years ago, and this is how she would take notes. She'd bring her iPad to church, and instead of playing games on that during the message, she would draw the message out. She would do it in a visual way to help her process because she was a visual person. And so for some of you, that's you. You just get the arts, you love the arts, you know that it's a part of you. It's just intuitive. But look, even if this is not you, I'm telling you, beauty is still a part of you. Just maybe not in the ways that you typically think about. Maybe you're not into music or poetry or painting. You're not a big emotion-loving person. But let me ask you some questions. Do you love to organize things and put things in their place? Do you love to organize your garage or a pantry or a closet? And after you've organized something like this and you got everything in its place, have you ever stepped back from it and said, that is a thing of beauty. Look at how beautiful that thing is. Do you like to learn about cars or wood or food? Do you like to work in your yard? Do you like to manicure your lawn and get it well landscaped and everything looking perfect? Do you like 4-inch thick, tall, green grass? Do you like mow lines like this? Do you look at this picture and you're like, that is a thing of beauty right there. I love it. It just looks so perfect. Do you enjoy fishing in the early morning? Are you intrigued by water or travel or space? You know, for a long time, we've had the Hubble telescope, which has given us pretty good pictures, and now there's the Webb telescope. And I don't know if you've looked at any of the images from the Webb telescope yet, but it is giving us pictures of things that we have never seen before. Pictures like this, where you look at, I don't even know if this one is our galaxy or not. It's probably another galaxy. How many stars are in there? Can you even count those? There's no way you can even count it on this picture. This is just an image that somebody took out in outer space. Look at those millions and millions of stars in our galaxy. You look at those things and you're just amazed by that? Did you post pictures of your kids' back to school photos this week? You know, it's that time. We're in that 2-week period where everybody posts pictures of their kids going back to school. Now, what are you doing when you post pictures of your kids going back to school? You're like, I want to remember this. This is a memory, you know, 2nd, 4th, and 3rd grade, you know, or 6th, 8th, and 9th grade, or here's my senior going off for their last year of school, and everybody posts these pictures. Yeah, you're celebrating a memory, but you're also saying, look at my people, they're beautiful, and I want to celebrate this. Here's some pictures of back to school kids that people have posted this last year. Wait a minute. How did that one get in there? That's not a kid. That's Michael Beckley. All right, no, here's a picture. These are 4 of our girls as they go back to school. Again, what are you doing when you post these pictures, parents? You're celebrating beauty, right? And you want other people to celebrate along with you. Here's what I'm saying. All of those things are things of beauty. It's in you to long for it. It's in you to create it as well and to spread it. And I'm guessing that if you would think back on your childhood at least, you could see it there. Even if you've lost some of it as an adult, because we lose some of this, I think, as an adult. But as a kid, if you can remember back that far, you can see it there. You ever have an imaginary friend growing up? Let's do a little poll. I told you I want this to be interactive. Who has had an imaginary friend? Go ahead and raise your hand. If you had an imaginary friend when you were growing up, don't be shy, it's awesome. You had a good imagination, right? My youngest sister, her name is Allie. I have 4 siblings, so my youngest sister, Allie, had an imaginary friend. Her name was Jamma. I don't know, that's what she called her. And we had a lot of fun with Jamma, especially as older siblings. We'd be like, where's Jamma at? What's Jamma doing? And then sometimes somebody would sit down in a chair and be like, oh, you're sitting on Jamma, get up. So, kind of fun things that families do. You ever play hot lava floor in your living room? Throw pillows all over the floor, jump from couch to couch, furniture to furniture until mom's like, you're ruining my furniture, you're ruining my pillows, the imagination. You play house or hotel or office or ninjas. I had a cousin, we played ninjas, that's what we did. We dressed up in these black actual ninja, there was a ninja store. We went to the ninja store and we bought these black outfits and we had nunchucks that we would hurt each other with. We had throwing stars. Mostly rubber throwing stars, and then later he got older and he got metal throwing stars. And that was like, woo, we're gonna kill somebody with these things. You try to throw them in trees. We loved it. It's kind of fun if you can do that, to think back about your childhood, and those things can be thrilling, and in some sense, those days are very freeing as well, to have the imagination of a child. And what I'm telling you is it's always been there for all of us. Not for all of us in exactly the same way, but in some way. And you know why it's always been there and it's still in you? It's because you were created for it. Did you know it's the very core of who you are as a human being, to long for and to create beauty? But don't just take my word for it. Let's see it from God himself. Take your Bible and turn to Genesis chapter 1, if you would. And I always like to give you the page number. This one's super easy. It's page 1, probably whatever Bible you're in. So grab a Bible in front of you or on your device as well. What we get in Genesis chapter 1, of course, is the creation account. Now, we got to say this. God doesn't tell us everything about creation in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. And this is really important because a lot of times in our day, there's a lot of questions that we try to ask Genesis chapter 1 and 2 that God was never trying to answer. And so we have to be careful about pressing Genesis 1 and 2 to give us answers like, how old or how young is the earth? You're never going to get that answer from Genesis 1 or 2 because God wasn't trying to tell us that. That's not what he's trying to deliver to us. The exact processes that God used to create the world, that's not the point of Genesis 1 and 2. But what God is trying to tell us is really important. So we want to make sure we see what God is actually speaking to, what he's telling us. And today, for our purposes, we want to see what God has to tell us about beauty and about creation. And so here's what we get in Genesis 1 and verse 1. In the beginning of human time, God created the heavens and the earth. So God creates from the very beginning. In the beginning, God who's going to reveal himself to us all throughout the Bible and all throughout history, is the one who creates everything that exists. In Colossians chapter 1 in the New Testament and in John chapter 1, it tells us that through Jesus, everything was created, things in heaven and things on earth. So everything that exists, we believe, has been created by God, who's revealing himself to us here. Verse 2 says this, "Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters." Now, verse 2 can be a little bit confusing, and there are a lot of questions you want to ask verse 2. But for our purposes, what verse 2 says is that there was a void, there was an emptiness, there was a formlessness that was there that existed. But the Spirit of God begins hovering, moving over the surface of the waters, getting ready to create out of this emptiness, this void, something. And then verse 3, out of that emptiness, God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. So the first thing we see is out of this emptiness, God brings light. He brings purpose. He begins to bring order out of the emptiness and the void that is there. Verse 4, God saw that the light was good, that it was beautiful, that it was right, that it was just as God wanted it to be. And he separated light from the darkness. He begins to create order. He begins to create structure out of the emptiness and the void that is there. Verse 5, God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. So now God is establishing patterns. He's establishing days, and the story is going to go on to show us day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to day 6. He works on all those days to create things. On day 7th, he rests. He calls that a Sabbath. He says, this is a pattern for you that I want you as the human beings I'm creating to follow. You work, and then you rest. And then we know this, that makes up a week. And then weeks turn into months, and then months turn into years. And within those years, there's seasons. There's a cycle to everything that God creates. This is God creating order, creating patterns, creating rhythms out of the emptiness and the void that is there. And the rest of Genesis chapter 1, it goes on just to show us the rest of the days, what he creates on day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. And after each of the days that God creates something, he says, now that's good. It's beautiful. It's just as I want it to be. Check out day 5. Let's jump to there in verse 20 and see what God creates there. On day 5, God said, he speaks into existence, let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. So he's creating all the creatures in the water and in the sky on day 5. Verse 21, God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw, like every other day, that this was good. Now this is really incredible when you think about what's going on here and what God is doing here in this creation. I love God creating the creatures of the sea. Now it's interesting for us because a lot of the birds of the air we've seen, scientists have explored, we've documented them, we've categorized them, but do you know there are so many things that God has created in the sea that no human being has ever seen in the history of the entire world. In fact, recently, and just in this last year, there's been an exploration that has been going on deep sea between Hawaii and Mexico in the Pacific Ocean. And during this deep abyssal dive that they've been doing, they have found what is probably over 30 creatures that no human being in the history of the world has ever seen before. Here's a picture of some of them. Now, you might look at those creatures and be like, weird. Those look weird, right? But they're amazing. Look at the colors. Look at the beauty of these things. Look at what God has designed that no human being until this last year, in all the thousands of years that we have existed on this planet, no one has ever laid eyes. You're some of the first people ever to lay eyes on these creatures. But at the very beginning, God created these things. He moved in the waters and he put those in the ocean, things of beauty all around us. See, what this creation account is giving to us is this: order from darkness, patterns, rhythms, and goodness in all of it. It's absolutely beautiful. There's diversity that is there. This is God revealing himself to us. God, when he creates, he always creates out of his nature and out of who he is. So when God shows us this order and this diversity and this beauty and this goodness, he is saying, in essence, this is who I am. Therefore, this is how I create. Order, abundance, life, structure, diversity. Now, you see that in all of God's creation, of course, but you know there is a pinnacle to his creation. When God creates humans, God does something with humans that's different than every other aspect of his creation. He puts his image inside of them. That makes human beings distinct from everything else. Now, there's lots of discussion about what it means to be created in the image of God for sure, but at the least, it has to mean this. Look at what verse 26 says. God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." Again, lots of things that it probably means to be created in the image of God, but at least it means this. God says, "I'm going to create humans in my image, now rule." In other words, we're created to represent God on earth, to rule over what he has created, to lead this creation, to take care of his beautiful creation as representatives of him. Trees don't do that, right? Fish don't rule over all things on this creation. Your dog doesn't rule over all things. Your cat might rule over a lot of things, at least in your house. But no, this is a human responsibility. And with the responsibility that God has given to humans to rule over this, God has put something of himself inside of us. And what he has put inside of us is a capacity for beauty, a longing for beauty, an acknowledgement of beauty. And we're supposed to cultivate that beauty of this world that God has given to us. Think about it this way. Has it ever struck you that humans are the only part of creation that is concerned with beauty? Again, your dog doesn't care about beauty very much. Doesn't care about what you look like when you wake up in the morning, right? Your dog doesn't look at you and say, like, "Hey, could you take a shower? Could you put some makeup on? Your dog doesn't care about that at all, right? They're not concerned with beauty. My dogs don't care exactly what their food looks like. I got one dog that eats out of the trash. The other dog used to eat her poop when she was a puppy. That's disgusting, right? That's gross. What do dogs do? The dogs want to eat, they want to sleep, they want to play, they want to recreate, they have to relieve themselves. They live off of instinct. That is the way animals live. Now, they do have some capacity for affection. Because if you've got an animal that when you come home and that tail just starts wagging like this, you realize, okay, they have some capacity for closeness and for some affection for sure. We call dogs man's best friend, right, for a reason. But beauty is not really a category for animals. Only humans care about and appreciate beauty. Only after human beings were created on day 6 did God look back on everything that he created and said, now all of this is very good. Each day was good. Day 6 after humans, that is very good because there's something different about humans. The image of God is inside of us that allows us to appreciate beauty, to long for beauty, and lastly, to recreate beauty in the image of God. God creates human beings to recreate. Remember what we saw about God's nature from creation. His image is beauty, life, abundance, order, and structure is a part of that beauty. So when he creates us in his image, that means all of those things are in us as a part of his image. The ability to both enjoy and to create beauty. Notice the first thing, for instance, that God tells humans to do in verse 27. After we've been created in his image, verse 27 repeats it. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And then God immediately blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Get busy co-creating in my image. Make a bunch of little image bearers, right? That's what's happening when you have children. You are participating with God in co-creating people that are made in his image. Now, animals get to procreate too, but they're not creating image bearers, right? Only we as human beings get to be a part of that. And then we see a little bit more about what this means in a parallel account in Genesis chapter 2. Notice what it says in Genesis 2 and verse 8. Now, the Lord God had planted a garden in the east. The thing that God does when he creates is he makes a garden. He cares about nature and the beauty of nature. And there he put the man he had formed in a garden. Not in a building, not in a house. Those are okay, but in the original creation, it was in nature, right? Verse 9. The Lord God made all kinds of trees to grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. Now, why would the writer of Genesis tell us that the trees that God created were pleasing to the eye and good for food? That has to mean that someone that God has created has the capacity to be pleased, to enjoy pleasure, to enjoy beauty, to like the things that they see and that they get to eat and they get to experience, right? because we have a capacity for beauty and for enjoyment being created in God's image. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life, the tree of abundance and fullness, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So this is the garden that God creates. He puts human beings in it. And then look at verse 15. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work that garden and to take care of that garden. Now this is very interesting. The words there, work the garden and take care of it, mean to cultivate the garden and to protect the garden, to nurture it, to develop it, to bring it into its fullness. In fact, earlier he said he's going to rule over the wild animals, which seems a little crazy. Did God create animals and they were wild? Apparently in some way they were wild, and man needed to come into this place and provide order and structure and to put things in their place. It was beautiful to begin with, but they're supposed to continue to beautify it and get it in order and protect it and take care of it. God has invited us in creating us to cultivate beauty, to organize it, to care for it, and to do so as our job. This is our work, which means that work is good, and it has to do with promoting beauty and goodness in this world. We see that further on when Adam is told to name the animals. So God gives Adam this task: bring order, bring structure, give the animals an identity, give them a purpose, and organize them and take care of them. Look, it's just all over the place here in the creation account. This longing for beauty and the ability to create beauty because we're made in God's image. Did you know this is who you are? This is who you are. I want you to think for a second about how you think about yourself. When you think about your identity and who you are as a person, how do you think about yourself? I'm guessing for many of you, you would begin to think about your roles, right? Part of my identity is that I'm a mom, I'm a dad, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a grandparent, I'm a child, I'm a teenager, I'm a student, I'm a worker, I'm a salesperson, I'm a mechanic, I'm an educator, I'm a teacher. And those things are true. That's part of your identity for many of you. You might add to that a little bit the things that you don't like about yourself or that you struggle with. You know, part of who I am is I'm a worrier. I'm a fearful person, or I struggle with these things. Some of you may add positive things. I'm a happy person. I'm a positive person. I'm an Enneagram 7, and the world is my oyster, and I'm happy, and all of these things. Maybe that's part of who you are. If you're grounded in Jesus and you've trusted in him, you also know that you're a child of God, right? And so the greatest thing about you is actually that you are in the family of God, that God's your father, that you're chosen by God, you're adopted into his family, you're forgiven. That's good, and that is how God wants you to see yourself. But a piece that I think that many of us have missed and don't think nearly enough about is that as image bearers of God, we are all creators of beauty. That a core piece of your identity is that you are a creator of beauty. And you know what? That was true of you before anything else was true of you. For those of you that have trusted Jesus as your Savior and you're a child of God, do you know that before you were a child of God, you were a creator of beauty? That a core piece of your identity, who you are and how you are formed and what you are formed to do in this world, is that you are a creator of beauty before anything else. And that's why you long for it. And that's why you can create it. Do you know that this is the reason why people who don't even believe in Jesus or don't even think that God exists can create and do create beautiful things? And it's the reason why we can appreciate the beauty that people that don't even know God create for us in music, in movies, in art, in paintings, in the things that they create because they have the image of God inside of them, which means they can create beautiful things. That's who they are. All of this is what we want to explore in this series. Today, we're just getting started with it, but my hope is that this truth and this teaching will awaken us to understand beauty in a way maybe we've never looked at beauty before. To see all of these longings for beauty that we have inside of our heart as whispers of God that point us back to him and show us who he is. I hope you'll see the value and the goodness of pursuing beauty and the arts, and maybe awaken your mind to things that you've put off or you haven't worried or you haven't thought about, to let yourself explore those. I hope you'll pause a little bit in this series to learn to take a little time from all the busyness of life to stop and to see the beautiful things that are all around you. Together, we'll wrestle through the corruption and the frustration of beauty. Because I imagine already in some of your minds, be like, Jeremy, you're just talking about this like this is all perfect and it's wonderful and it's great. No, because you know something happened in that garden that also messed everything up. And so the artist works with a lot of frustration. And those of us that aren't artists but can learn to appreciate beauty know also there are things like indulgence and overindulgence in certain physical things God has given us that can take us down a wrong path. And so we're going to wrestle with what that looks like and that means. And together we're going to look at how Jesus redeems beauty just like he redeems everything else. Because the final thing we need for today is this. We were created by God to recreate, but we were also created for him. You were created by God, but ultimately you were also made for him. See, all the beauty and the goodness and life that were found in that original creation happened because the original humans were in relationship with the Creator. They walked with God, and they talked with God, and they knew him. And since he's the source of beauty and creation and life, they knew who they were. They knew why they existed, and they knew how to enjoy this and do this in a way that was fulfilling and pure and very good. So look, if we're going to understand beauty and even who we are as human beings, we need our Creator to be able to do that. So thank God that he has made himself accessible to us, right? I mean, even looking briefly at Genesis chapter 1 and 2, what you have that we hold in our hands here is God saying to you and me, this is who I am. This is reality. This is what beauty is all about. Come to me, and I'll reveal my truth to you in my word. But you know, even greater than this word, these pages in this book that we hold that is the word of God, is the word of God that came down to us in human form. Jesus Christ himself. Because you know how it went in the garden. Adam and Eve said to God, nah, we're going to try this on our own. We know you created and made all this. We know you've been so good to us, but we think that we can kind of figure this out on our own. And so they separated themselves from God by taking that fruit. They had to leave the garden. They had to leave that close relationship with God. And all throughout human history, humans have always been trying, either running away from God or trying to get back to God, but never on their own able to come back to make God accessible to themselves. God saw us in this state. He looked down at us, and in his mercy and his grace, he said, they can't make it back to relationship with me. I will come down to them. And he came to dwell among us. He came down to bring the Garden of Eden back to us so that we can know him and know true beauty. In John chapter 1 and verse 14, we read this about Jesus. The Word, Jesus Christ, became human, and he came to dwell with us. He came to bring the Garden of Eden back to us, and we beheld his glory. We got to see true beauty again. What ultimate true beauty actually looks like in the face of Jesus, who came down to us when we couldn't get back to him. We saw his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, Creator, and he is full of grace and truth. Look, we can't talk about beauty without talking about Jesus. You want to know who you are? You want to understand why you long for beauty and how to express beauty and appreciate and enjoy beauty in the best possible way? Then you need to come to Jesus. There are numerous classic works of art that depict scenes from the life of Jesus. I think this one is my favorite. It's by Caravaggio, who painted it in 1601 to 1602. It's called The Incredulity of St. Thomas. It tells the story of doubting Thomas. Thomas was one of the disciples of Jesus, and after Jesus had died and resurrected from the grave, Jesus began appearing to his disciples. But as he appeared to them, Thomas wasn't with them originally, and so he didn't get to physically see Jesus. And if you know this story, you know that Thomas said something like this: unless I see the nail scars in his hand, and I touch them, and unless I see the scar in his side and I place my hands inside of it, I will not believe that he resurrected. Can you believe the presumption of Thomas? The pride that is there? He's jaded at this point. He's so skeptical, completely doubting that Jesus resurrected from the grave. Even though his friends said, we saw him and he appeared to us, Thomas cannot believe. And you know what Jesus does? Is Jesus appear to Thomas and say, Thomas, you might as well just go to hell for not believing in me. That's what you deserve from doubting that I did what I said I was going to do. Now, what does Jesus do? He comes before Thomas, and when he appears before him, he says, Thomas, see here the nails, touch them, and take your hand and place it in my side. Can you believe this? God in the flesh, who gave his life in sacrifice, who rose from the grave and conquered death, meets us in our doubts and in our skepticism. He meets you where you are. You've got to gaze at this image for a little bit to just take in the fullness of it. You see Thomas there, who is certainly inquisitive, and perhaps Peter and John behind him, inquisitive in this moment and yet reluctant. And so Jesus takes Thomas's hand and pulls him in. Can you imagine what Thomas is thinking in this moment? I shouldn't have said what I said. I shouldn't have done it, but is this really him? And he's pulling me in. Would you let Jesus pull you in? Would you let him pull you in this series and meet you where you are and show you who you are and show you what beauty truly is and show you how he has given you the capacity, the longing for that, and show you how all of that is found in a relationship with him? Would you pray with me?